Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Show tune go?
Where'd your other music?
Where'd my show tune go, Peter? That's okay.
It's election day.
Oh,
I found you some election music.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Palmer coming to you from the back of the Voc Academy, WCPC, Westfield Community Programming, Channel 15, and WestfieldTV.org. You'll notice that it is not Ken. Ken is on his ship as we are speaking. Peter, where is he? Where is Ken? Somewhere.
He's in the Caribbean right now.
He's
on a
in-
Virgin ship. Supposedly there's a hammock.
I know, he has a hammock and he has a deck and he's just having a wonderful time. And here we are stuck.
I looked at a Virgin ship last night because he's raving about it on the internet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the prices aren't bad. It was about what we paid for the Princess Cruise and the same comparable stateroom, and everything's included.
Well, we had everything included. I don't know the price. I don't remember because I don't go back that far. So good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Palmer, and welcome to our show. We have a lot to get to. I have my favorite co-host in the entire world that always fills in with me, and that would be none other than Mr. Harry Rock, the king of the YMCA and the Westfield 350. Good morning, Harry.
Good morning, Kathy.
Welcome
nice
back.
to be with you here. Thank you for asking me to
No,
come and be with you.
if you can't do it, I'm not doing it. That's it. That's
yeah.
it. I'm done. I'm
I
finished.
think
I'm
you
done.
can handle this just fine without any of us.
Oh, I don't know. We have had to do that, haven't we, Peter? On occasion, yes, we have. So we have a lot to get to. I don't want to ignore Peter Coles, our talented and ever-ready producer.
I'm just sitting here talking to Jay.
Oh, Jay, I have a question for you, Mr. Pagluka, so please do not leave. As always, we need something from you, too.
She's got a question for you, so don't leave.
Don't leave. I need to ask you something. So,
Basically, Jay, it means you're going to be asked to do something for free.
Well, no, it's not for... I just need a piece of information. That's all. It's very simple. Very simple. But now that you mention it, Harry, there are a list of things to do. The most important thing, folks, to tell you is today is voting day. Please go out and vote. I know you're only one, but the voting numbers are made up of everybody who is only one. And it does make a difference. I know you think it doesn't,
makes a difference.
but it really does. Take my word for it. I'm an old lady. I know I've been around since the Kennedy years. Oh, my God, don't tell anybody I said that. That is so painful. But please go out and vote. There are many voting places. They're open all day. It is at your convenience. Please do it. That's the end of my message. Beep, it will delete. So, Harry, we have a lot of guests here today, and we're starting off with my favorite place of all in the city of Westfield. For those of you who say there is nothing to do in Westfield, you are dead wrong. There are many things to do in Westfield, and one of them is the Westfield Theater Group that I know some of you don't know anything about, because Shelley will tell you, we get people in there who say, oh, I've never been here before. The Westfield Theater Group is located in the heart of downtown Westfield, right across from the Boys and Girls Library at 28 Court Street. It's on the corner of Court Street and Holland Avenue. It is very easy to find. It is that lovely building with the big pillars. The Westfield Theater Group is a department of the Westfield Women's Club, which has been operating in the city of Westfield since 1914. The building that we are in is built in 1927. And I've talked enough. I'm done. So, First of all, let me introduce you to one of my best friends in the entire world, Shelley Haber. Shelley,
Morning. How are you this morning?
tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you doing
What
with
am I
this?
doing this time? Well, I'm here as a representative and producer for our upcoming Christmas show, which is Irving Berlin's Holiday Inn. It is a wonderful show. I have been, a little background, a member of the Westfield Women's Club and the Westfield Theater Group
Shh, don't tell the truth.
for 30 plus years, which, no, I'm not as old as dirt, but I'm getting there. And I have a lovely gentleman to my right who is one of our stars of that show. His name is Glenn Leslie. Introduce yourself, Glenn, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Yeah. I've been doing theater for most of my adult life, off and on, and I moved back to the area during COVID. So I've only been back in the area for a little time, and I did 1776 with Westfield Theater Group a couple of years ago.
Are you from Westfield originally?
No, I'm originally from West Boylston,
Okay.
outside of Worcester.
And so what brought you to Westfield?
It's where I could find a house that I could afford.
Okay, that
Actually,
works.
live in part of Indian Orchard, but
Okay. Yeah, cool. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My kids lived in Indian Orchard for a while. It's a lovely small community. I really enjoyed it there. So, Shelley, you've been involved for over 30 years, and what is your role in this particular show?
In this particular show, I am the producer.
Which means?
No, unlike Broadway or Hollywood, I don't foot the bill. I do not do that. But I
Oh,
make
darn.
no, couldn't afford to. But I make sure that, excuse me, everybody does their job. I make sure that the director and the choreographer and the stage manager, and make sure we have a lighting guy or a tech guy or a costumer. Oh yeah, a little bit of everything. And then I make sure that the show goes on the way it's supposed to.
Shelley, you've produced quite a few shows. How many shows have you actually produced?
At last count, it was over 50.
Oh, dear Lord in heaven.
All with Westfield Theater Group? or-
Producing wise, yes. But I've been in shows, I've been on stage, I've been backstage, I've played in the pit band, not only with Westfield, but with Amherst Leisure Services, with Agawam, which was ART, who unfortunately is no longer here. I worked with Chicopee. I've worked with, well, Kathy's Little Murder Mystery Group. But Westfield is my home base.
Did you start as an adult actor, or were you involved in school?
I started when I was in third grade.
Oh, wow.
Doing little nursery rhymes and things like that. Did some stuff through high school and college, and
Okay.
kind of got away from it for a while, but came back to Westfield in 1991.
But you always had an interest in it.
Always had it.
And Kathy, did you start when you were young?
Well, I would say fourth grade.
Oh, okay.
Fourth grade with Maria Maris. I was an angel. Terrible typecasting. Terrible typecasting.
Oh, I can do that better than you. I was the
But
girl,
I-
I could say the girl with the little curl in her forehead that when she was good, she was very, very good. And when she
I
was bad,
didn't
she
do
was,
a lot.
yeah.
I didn't do a lot until my adult years, and it was Denny Akins that dragged me tooth and nail down to the Westfield Theater Group.
Really?
I was sitting home by myself, and I was, golly, I have to say I was probably in my middle to late 20s somewhere. Yeah, late 20s. And Denny called me up and he said, "What are you doing today?" And I said, "I'm reading the newspaper." He said, "No, we're not. We're going down to audition for the Westfield Women's Club." I said, "No, we're not." Denny said, "Yes, we are." "No, we're not." "Well, yes, we did." And that was where I met Bob Plass. I played Bob Plass's love interest. So needless to say,
You did?
my hair really was coffee bean brown in those days without paying $75 a month. And his hair was also. And he had that, he was adorable. Bob was absolutely adorable.
How many years ago was this now?
Oh, heavenly days. We've got to be talking 78 or 79.
And Bob was living in town?
Bob was here.
That was-
Yes, he was working for the mayor of Springfield.
Oh.
And for MoCA in the mayor of Springfield. And that was before he went to New York. I believe I don't know
Oh,
when
that
he
was
left.
before he went to New York. That's what was
Correct.
confusing me here.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct. I don't really remember, but he was absolutely
Wow.
adorable, and he was a joy to work for, except,
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
you know, Bob. So there was a scene where I'm singing this horribly sappy, sugary song called Artificial Flowers. Does anyone know that song?
No.
Oh, it's about
She
this
made
girl who-
artificial flowers.
Yeah, she makes artificial flowers and she dies. And oh my God, it was terrible. So I'm on the floor and I've got this beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous Victorian blue gown. But every time Bob would step on it, so I'm supposed to get up. And I can't get up because Bob is on my gown. Every time. So I came in one day and the musical director had a wiffle ball bat. And I said, "What is this for?" And she said, "Kathy, you're going to put it behind you. And when Bob steps on it, you're going to whack him with a bat."
Oh, that's funny.
No, I didn't do it, but he was just great, and that was my first experience with the Westfield Theater Group. But I didn't go back again because I was having that silly raising children experience. I didn't go back until Bye Bye Birdie.
Okay.
And then I never left, and I played Gloria.
1994, maybe?
And they thought I was Carol because I wore a red wig. So they thought I was Carol. No, I'm not Carol.
Your alter
You know
ego.
Carol.
Oh my gosh, yes. We were in My Fair Lady together, and I played Mrs. Harcourt, and she played the housekeeper. And she went over to the tavern in between shows. And someone said, "Oh, you were in that show we just saw." And she said, "Yes." And they said, "But tell me something. How did you manage to play both those parts?"
Oh, is that right? Oh, my gosh.
Well, enough about me. Let's get on back to you. So, Glenn, what brought you to this show to do this show, Holiday Inn, and what part are you playing?
I'm playing the part of Ted Hanover.
That's
It was played by Fred Astaire in the movie.
great, great, great. You don't look like Fred.
I do not.
He dances
Before we
like
talk
Fred.
about the roles, though, and either one of you can answer this, tell us what the show is basically about so that the audience knows. Have you seen the movie, Holiday Inn? Bing Crosby,
So, Holiday Inn?
Bing Crosby and Fred
I
Astaire.
don't think so. I have to hear more about it, but maybe I have, and I'm not remember. I don't know the title though.
It's not one that you see on TV a lot. You'll see it on PBS.
Okay.
Or
I don't-
TCM or something like that.
Yeah, I don't
It's the
think
movie
I
in
have.
which the song White Christmas was introduced.
Originally
right?
in, not the movie White Christmas. And people get those two confused because you say Bing Crosby. So tell us what it's about. Glenn, we'll start with you.
Oh, that's his job.
Okay. It is about this trio of performers, two men and a woman, who have an act, and one of the men and the woman are involved in a relationship, and he decides he wants to get out of show business and go to Connecticut and buy a farm, and that kind of leaves the other guy, which is my part, out in the cold, and the woman decides that she wants to go and stay in show business. So we have the one man up in Connecticut with his farm, and the other couple go off and pursue their career. The man at the farm meets a woman up there, and they start forming a relationship. Meanwhile, the other relationship of the two people went off to show business splits up because she goes off because she landed a millionaire who's going to make her a star. So he comes back. My character comes up to Ted, goes up to Jim's farm to seek out his friend for counsel, and he ends up meeting this woman, and it's basically a love triangle to the end. And there's a lot. It's loaded with Irving Berlin classics.
So in a way, you're the antagonist way. You're the fly in the ointment to this man's love life. You dastardly man, you.
Well, as one of the lines says, is this a thing for you? And my character says, no, it's a thing for Jim. He never wants to see them leave.
Okay, gotcha. Shelley, who else is in this show that we might know or might not know?
One of the character of Jim, as he mentioned, is played by A.J. Berube. He's been on our stage many times. Lauren Sessler is also another veteran of Westfield Theater Group. Jen Merritt was in Nutcrackers back in the Christmas of last year.
Oh, it was good. That was
Yep.
a great show.
Yep. So we've got some Carol Palmer, Rock Palmer, obviously, two of our longtime veterans of Westfield Theater Group. We have several newcomers, which is great. We always like to have new people joining us. So it's a very small cast for some of the shows that we've done. It's only a cast of 28, which people are going to go, oh my God, that's 28. But we've had casts as large as 40. So this is a relatively small cast for us, but it's been a great cast to work with. Somebody described this show as, we have a wonderful choreographer in Mary Beth Missoula, our director Rob Clark, and our music director Tyler Cook. But somebody described this show as a show of dances with some lines thrown in.
But it is a musical.
It is a full-fledged musical. Some of the songs you might know, not only White Christmas, Blue Skies. Give me a couple more because my brain just went totally blank.
Easter Parade,
Easter Parade, right? Okay. But
Stepping Out.
There are 14 main dances, and I'm talking huge dances. Then there's a few smaller little dances, and it's just they have worked extremely hard, 2 and 3 nights a week, learning all these dance numbers, learning all these songs. We're going to do a first run tonight to see.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Always fun to do that first time putting everything together. It's going to be rough, but we'll see how things go.
What are the dates of the show?
We open, this is something we're going to do a little differently. We're going to be opening on a Thursday. We will be running 2 weekends in December, December 5, 6, and 7, 12, 13, and 14. The evening shows are at 7:30. 2 matinees on the 7th and 14th at 2 o'clock. So total of 8 performances. Tickets will be going on sale hopefully by the end of this week at westfieldtheatergroup.com. So, like I say, we're going to try opening on a Thursday night this time. So it gives us 8 performances in 2 weekends.
When did you actually start auditions and just
Auditions
people
were
together?
back in June,
Oh, really?
and we started rehearsals late August.
Oh, wow. Oh, you really get a head start on it.
With this kind, they've been, like I say, they've been rehearsing the dances 2 and 3 nights a week. So
Wow.
takes
Is
a
that
lot of
normal,
work.
Kathy, to have that much lead
Pretty
time?
much. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We always do auditions early for the Christmas show, and we usually start end of August, beginning of September. The same thing with the spring show. The spring show is, when is the spring show?
spring show opens March 27th, and we've already had auditions and cast that show.
So, and that will start right away in January, and that's early for our spring show.
It is because we have to work around Easter.
Easter. Yeah, we don't like to go dark.
And so
on
the
Easter.
show that just took place, which was very good, by the way,
It was
when-
excellent.
when did that start? When did they?
Birthday Candles, they auditioned that, oh gosh, I don't remember directly, probably in March or April.
Wow.
And they
I
started
didn't realize
rehearsals
it was
for that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You really
Now,
need
that
the
was
lead
only a
time.
small cast of 6, so they obviously didn't, rehearse quite as extensively, but they were rehearsing upstairs for that while we started rehearsals downstairs for Christmas. So there were double rehearsals a couple nights a week.
Oh, is that right?
And there are a lot of community theater groups in the area who are competing for schedule and times and performers. So you get the leg up on the competition.
Oh, yeah, right.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, we all think that way, so it doesn't always work. And honestly, Glenn, what I've seen happen is even when you start early, sometimes people auditioning, if a better role comes up, they will still leave you. So
Yep.
I don't know how.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's like if you get a job offer and you say yes, and then you get a better job offer. You're going to take the better one. And we don't get upset about it. We don't lose our hair. We just cry a lot at night into our pillows and just forget about the whole thing and give it all up. But that's okay. No, it happens. So let me ask you, because I'm not, other than the Leslie name, I don't know a lot about you. So what other theater groups have you worked with? And the roles and the time you spent rehearsing it. No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
jeez.
I'm kidding.
My first show back, which was in 2021.
So you've been back recently.
I moved back during COVID.
Oh.
I moved to the area during COVID.
Oh, okay.
first show I did was in 2021, fall of 2021, out in Hamden, excuse me. It was 12 Angry Men. I played Juror 4.
Great show. That is a great show.
My brother David was in that as Juror number 7. Not 7. Yeah, 7. And then I did 1776.
Now, what role did you have in 1776? With all the wigs on, I don't remember anybody.
John Dickinson.
Okay.
I was AJ's rival in that show as well.
See a pattern here.
We have a thing going on here. I can see. I see a pattern.
He always, well, I don't want to spoil anything.
That was a wonderful show. 1776 was fabulous. Did you see that, Harry? You must have.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And my brother David was in that. He was Edward Rutledge, who did the big molasses to rum number.
Mm-hmm.
Last year I played General Waverly in White Christmas at Exit 7. And earlier this year I did Reverend Chris Sparkle in The Mystery of Edwin Drood out in Wilbraham.
That one I'm not familiar with. All the other ones I am. Now, I assume where you lived back in, you said where you came from, Boylston?
West Boylston. Mm-hmm.
What did you do there? Did you work with Calliope?
I did a couple of things with them in their early years. Our brother John was one of the founding members with Kathy and David Lute there. I did a couple of reviews with them. I played a small part in 10 Little Indians, back when it was called 10 Little Indians, Agatha Christie mystery. But I did a lot of community theater in the early 80s. Many groups, many shows, different roles. I played Rooster in Annie twice. I played Junior Babcock in Mame twice. I played George in George M., the leading player in Pippin, Billy Crocker in Anything Goes.
Excellent. Do you have a favorite role? It doesn't necessarily need to be your favorite show. Sometimes my favorite role wasn't my favorite show.
A favorite role that I've played?
Yes.
Rooster and Annie.
Now, didn't Tom LaCourt play that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tom LaCourt played that. Yeah. Yeah. Is that also your favorite show?
No.
And you don't have to say this was either. No. Don't have to say this one. So do you have a favorite show?
It may be my favorite because it was the first Broadway show I ever saw. It was Barnum.
Interesting. Harry, do you have a favorite show you've seen at Westfield besides the 350? One that really stands out in you, and you and Anne. Anne, by the way, is a really, really good member of the Westfield Women's Club, his wife Anne. And you come to every show, and you usher for every show. You're just a really great patron.
I was selling actograms.
Yes, you always
do. I
do.
did very well at that, too, for a small...
That's who we need to sell actograms. We'll send him back to City Hall.
People weren't getting by me without $1 in their
I told you, don't make eye contact, didn't I? So, favorite show?
You know, well, of course, the 350 was definitely my all-time favorite because it was a great show. Plus, I was in charge of the whole 350 thing. But, well, you know, they have all been really, really good. Ann and I love community theater, and we love the fact that Westfield has community theater. So we go every time to support it. And, you know, this past show, Birthday Candles, was a surprise to me. I really had no expectations on it because I didn't know anything about it. And it took me a couple of minutes to figure out what was going on with the characters, you know, and all of a sudden they disappear. And then oh. And I found it really emotional. And this show...
Oh, you think?
Yeah. And it started conjuring up, because I'm the oldest now of my family. My parents are gone, uncles and aunts are gone, so it's me. And I'm the oldest of 6. So, you know, I was starting to live some of those parts as I was watching that and reflecting and thinking, and it was quite emotional. It was, I mean, a lot of the musicals are just fun entertainment. They don't necessarily, at least for me, conjure up a big emotion. There have been shows, and I can't really think which ones offhand, that have been emotional for me.
Superstar.
Could be.
Joseph.
Right,
Well,
right.
Joseph is good in the end. Superstar is. I won't tell you the ending of Superstar. I'll keep it a secret.
Right. But
It's the same ending as Godspell.
But what I will say is that they're all excellent, and some are, to your point, are huge, and especially when you have kids and stuff, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
that draws a lot of people in. This one was a small cast, and they were playing various parts, which I always find fascinating. Is that even within the show, you have to go through time changes,
Correct.
different age groups, and you somehow try to make yourself look younger or whatever. And I don't remember the names, but the woman who was playing, she carried it all the way through. She was 17, and then she was.
That was Monique.
Yeah, she never changed her
Nope.
dress.
Nope.
She wore a sweater now and then, but that was it. And again, that's what threw me off initially, because she was a teenager, but I knew she was older.
Right.
And then all of a sudden she was older,
Wait.
and it was the same thing. And then I figured, because I didn't know the show.
Yeah,
And
I
of course,
felt
I
the same
hadn't
thing when I
read
watched it. Yeah.
Right.
the little booklet ahead of time because I was selling actograms.
You
So
needed to read that to get some
right,
background data.
and so that's why it took me a minute to figure out, and I found, all of a sudden, the big breath. I said, oh, I've got it, and it was excellent.
Yeah. Well, there was that little sound effect of a zing that
Yes,
that
right.
gave you the passage of time.
The passage of
And
time,
the
right.
comment that, okay, now I'm 37, or now I'm 55, or whatever the ages were.
Right.
But yeah, it was, you had to be able to follow it and understand it. And yes,
WSKB?
right, it was very emotional.
WCPC?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it was very well done, and again, it has to be a challenge. These are all plays have gone on elsewhere, but you always put your own spin on it, and you have to think about how do you portray that passage of time or the movement of people leaving after they've passed away.
Yep.
But it was excellent. But it's hard for me. I mean, Joseph stands out. But I don't know. I just enjoy them all. We love seeing people that we know. A lot of times we don't know anybody. Carol and Rock, obviously, are favorites of mine. Rock is always, they're both such
Just don't tell her she can wear a
Carol and
tutu.
Rock are such characters. And it's just so much fun to watch what they're going to do with it. Rock is very funny. Carol is such a card, you just don't know where she's going to go
She
with
needs
it.
intervention.
Yeah, she does.
All right, Peter, if you are listening, are you listening to me, Peter? All righty, let's take a short break and we'll meet you back on the other side.
There's something wrong with the world today. I don't know what it is. Something's wrong with our eyes. We're seeing things in a different way, and God knows it ain't His. It sure ain't no surprise. We're living on the edge. Living on the edge. There's something wrong with the world today. The light bulb's getting dim. There's meltdown in the sky. If you can judge a wise man by the color of his skin, then mister, you're a better man than I. Living on the edge, you can't live yourself no far. Living on the edge, you can't live yourself no far. Living on the edge, you can't save yourself no far. Living on the edge. Tell me what you think about your situation.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Join us every Thursday morning
from 6 until at least 7:30.
Check out the Bobby G and Company Show
right here on WSKB 89.5
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
And welcome back to WCPC Westfield Programming in conjunction with Westfield State University. And here we are. This is Kathy Palmer and Ken Sten. Obviously, I'm not Ken. He has much better hair than I do. But he is sunning himself somewhere in the Caribbean in his hammock on his deck. And we hate you. No, we're only kidding. We're only kidding, Ken. If you're listening, we hope you have a great time. We have Harry Rock as my co-host. I won't do a show without him. And Peter Coles Underglass as producer, doing his job as always. This morning, our first guest for the first hour are my best friends from Westfield Theater Group, Shelley Haber. And then we have Glenn Leslie also with us. And we have been talking about the newest show that is coming up very quickly at Christmas. So I'm going to put you both on the spot just momentarily.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you, why should people come and see this show? So you both get a chance to answer that. Why you think audiences should come and see the show?
It's a phenomenal show with music and dance and happiness and joy, and it's a great way to celebrate the holiday season.
Good one. Good answer. Bing, you get 10 points.
Producer.
And you're the producer. Why shouldn't we?
No, well, I was going to say it's a kind of answer I have to give. But no, honestly, as an individual, I've watched it from audition to almost Tech Week. And it's a phenomenal cast. It's a make you feel good show. And in today's day and age, that's what we need.
Yes,
absolutely. Glenn, anything to add to that?
It's excuse me. It's going to be very entertaining. It's a very talented cast. From the leads all the way through the ensemble.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And the pit band.
And the pit band.
And the musical director is a joy to work with.
Oh, that he is.
Absolutely
the director,
is.
The choreographer, like I say, Rob Clark is our director, Tyler Cook is our music director, Mary Beth Mazzula is our choreographer. It's a cast of I was going to say thousands, but it seems that way, but a crew that is absolutely a joy to work with and a cast that has been wonderful.
Glenn, is there anything in this show that you're finding particularly challenging? I know what he's going to say, folks.
At this stage of my life, despite my dance history, the dancing is proving to be the challenge for me.
Interesting, and I've heard that from other members, though.
Because of the complexity of the dancing, or the physicality of it, or
the physicality of it. COVID did a number on me as far as being very sedentary. I used to be very active, and worked professionally as a dancer. And, so to come back and do this amount of dancing and some of the numbers I have. I've agreed with Mary Beth to choreograph some of them. Like I have a long tap solo at the end of the second act that, it's like, okay, yeah, the mind is willing, but the body is struggling a little bit right now. But it'll be great. It'll be a lot of fun.
How many dances did you have to learn?
Still in the process.
You're in a good number of them.
I'm in a good number of the numbers. I think there are probably 4 or 5 that I've learned most of, and then I have the ones that I'm choreographing as well.
Okay. Is it harder to learn a dance or harder to learn lines?
I've been having more difficulty learning lines lately.
I say we'll find out tonight when we do that first one.
Although I did a really nice long drive down to Virginia and back, where I did a lot of running of the lines in the car, so I should be in okay shape with that.
I've only been in a couple plays with Carol, And I said, okay, this is not for me. Learning lines was just brutal. And I will watch, there's been a couple of plays, and I don't know the names of the plays, and I can think of the actor who's now your director. He's
Rob
Clark.
Rob. And I'm trying to remember which play he was in, not that far removed, actually. But the long soliloquies and just how you remember all of that, and then his constant interaction with your partner going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and these long.
You kind of almost have to take them in little chunks. You know, if it's a soliloquy, you'd say, okay, this is what I'm going to learn today. I'm going to learn that little first paragraph, and then I'm going to learn the next paragraph. And then, you know, I played the Queen in Once Upon a Mattress, and there's a page-and-a-half monologue. And I learned it with my blocking as I went, okay, I say this when I go here, and then I'm going to go over here and say this. So I would go down in my basement, and I would learn chunks of it. And, okay, now I'm going to go here. But heaven forbid, you forget something, you have to trust yourself that you know it, and you have to learn it. But you also have to make sure you learn the lines around it, okay?
Right, that's the other part of it.
Because if they mess up, you have to be able to either jump in, or you have to hope that they will be able to feed you something if you forget.
Right.
Honestly, the soliloquies, the longer passages, I don't know how you feel, Glenn, but they're easier to learn than the non sequitur comments that come in. If you have a comment in the middle of someone's conversation and you're supposed to say, look, there's a bird over there, squirrel, those are harder because it comes out of nowhere.
Oh.
And sometimes those quick, like on the Big Bang Theory, if you listen to their dialogue, they're just very quick non sequiturs. They don't make sense by themselves, but it has to be there because someone else is waiting for your cue. And that's always a difficult decision for an actor to make. If someone misses your cue, Glenn, I'm supposed to say to you, well, you know, I bought the oranges yesterday. If I don't say it, what are you going to do about that?
Yeah. Well, there was one time I was doing a production of Brigadoon in Summerstock in Pennsylvania, and the theater used some local actors for some of the smaller roles. And there was a scene where my character, Harry Beaton, was supposed to deliver a waistcoat to the father of the bride. And he's supposed to greet me and offer his hand. And my character was very upset because his daughter was marrying someone besides me. And he's supposed to say, "Why do you not shake my hand, Harry?" And he just sticks his hand out there and doesn't say anything.
Okay.
So it's hard to respond. Well, I'm not taking your hand but I had to kind of finagle on the spot. Oh, I cannot take your hand, Mr. McLaren, blah, 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 blah. So.
And that's what happens, Harry. Sometimes if someone else misses their cue, you might know your lines verbatim.
Right.
But you're in a problem. You can't say what you're supposed to say.
So are you thinking ahead how you might react if something doesn't go right, or are you just trusting yourself?
Always.
I sometimes, as I'm getting more comfortable in the show, getting closer to showtime, thinking, okay, if something goes amiss.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some things where it's easier to just carry on, and other times it's like, okay, if this doesn't happen, it's a big problem. It's a big problem.
Or when someone doesn't enter when they're supposed to.
just
We've
gonna
had
say.
that happen.
I-
You're waiting and they're downstairs talking to somebody and you're waiting for them to make their entrance and they don't.
And you have to ad-lib going, well, I think I'm going to do this. And in your mind, you're going, where the heck is he? Why is he not up on stage? I need him to be
The
here.
panic must be awful.
And, you know,
Yeah, I don't think it's panic.
it's just you have to go with the flow and hope that the rest of the cast follows you. And if they don't, you better be prepared to say something because you've got to fill that spot. You don't want dead air. You know,
Yeah,
dead
the
space.
worst thing is dead air, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that's the joy of live theater.
Yes.
It is. Glenn, you've done a lot of shows, so let me ask you this, and maybe you don't have a preference. Do you prefer straight shows or musicals? Which one? This is hard. This is and there's no test at the end.
My history, being primarily a dancer, has been musicals. But as you know, you get older, as Gene Kelly said, you can't be a song and dance man your whole life. So I, the first show I did coming back was a play, and I had a great time with it. And I think there's more of that in my future. And it's nice to have. It's like, okay, I just quote just have to learn lines and blocking. I don't have to learn songs. I don't have to learn dances. I could just and I'm this one person, and there's one costume, and so I don't really have a preference, but probably a song and dance kind of musical is mine.
So you've done more musicals than you have the plain shows.
Yes.
Interesting. Shelley, what do you prefer?
Definitely musicals.
Because you produced both.
I've produced both. I think just because I'm more familiar with the musicals and stuff, as growing up, I listened to Rodgers and Hammerstein, Sondheim, all of that. It's more my genre, I guess, but I've done both.
Harry?
Do you act anymore?
Unfortunately, physically, it's not in my wheelhouse.
You're in the back.
But yeah.
But we do get her into the murder mysteries
Yes,
when
I
we do
do.
them.
That I can still handle.
That
but
we can do.
Yeah.
Before we because time is going very quickly here, tell me a little bit about the community band.
Yes, coming up tomorrow night, we have our community band concert up at Westfield High School. It will be at 7:30. It is a free concert open to all. We are dedicating it to one of our members who we just lost last week.
Don't go there.
I have to. Kevin Fedora was one of our drummers for more than 20 plus, almost 30 years.
Yeah.
All of the Palmer Dunk shows.
Yeah,
we told
he
him if he
played-
wasn't there, we wouldn't do it.
Yep, I recruited him from the community band to play in Robin Hood the first time around. And funny story, I was just telling it last night. He said, "Oh, I'm not a good enough drummer." And I said, "Yes, you are, and you're going to do it." "Oh, no, I can't do this." He'd come to a lot of the shows. And I said, "Yes, you are, and yes, you can." And I dragged him down, and he played Robin Hood the first time, absolutely loved it. "When's the next show? I want to do this again." He played many of the shows thereafter. Managed to play Robin Hood this time around, despite the fact he was quite ill, and was determined to play in Marion's honor after we lost her in November. And unfortunately lost his battle and passed last Monday.
The problem with Kevin, though, when he was playing in my shows, is he loved to do sound effects
Yes.
because he had this tremendous
electronic drum set.
instrument. So I would be watching, and I'd be taking notes, and all of a sudden I would hear a sound effect that wasn't in the script somewhere, but all of a sudden there'd be a zing or a bell or a bird or something going on with Kevin, and I'd look at him and he'd be just going, just smiling.
Yep.
So one never knew what kind of a sound effect
Nope.
I would get.
Nope.
He was doing that from the drums?
Yes.
Yes, he had he had
an electronic drum set that if you hooked it up to his phone with a special app,
how
you could
funny.
get all sorts of sound effects. And we used a lot of them in the show.
We used them all. We didn't do any sound from the booth.
For
We
instance,
did
like
all
with
the
Robin
sound
Hood,
from
the
here.
zing of the arrow, or
Right.
phone ringing, or the thud of whatever, he could make it happen.
He
So.
had it.
But yeah, the community band concert tomorrow night, like I say, at Westfield High School, 7:30. We've got some great music, including one that is the March of the Slave Children from Indiana Jones, which was a song that Kevin always wanted to play. He bought the music for us, and we will be playing it in his honor tomorrow night.
Yeah, very
So that is, and it's made up of community people. All community
All
people.
Greater Western Mass.
And who is the director?
Director would be, actually, we have co-directors. Pat Kennedy from Westfield High School and Will Cho from the middle school, or whatever it's called these days. I've lost track of what it's called.
I think it's still the middle school, isn't it?
Down here, it's the middle school,
Yeah.
intermediate school.
Well, he's at the intermediate school then. I
Yeah,
forget.
he's
Is
up
it
at
by
the north side.
Southampton Road?
Yep.
Right.
Yep. So,
Okay.
and so they co-direct for us. Gene Bartley started the concert band, the Greater Community Concert Band, close to 30 years ago. And he then retired and passed it on. And Jim O'Connor directed it for a few years, and then he moved to New Jersey. And
That was
now-
nervy.
I know it was. And so now Pat and Will are co-directing.
How many members?
This time around, we've got about 45.
Oh, wow. And how many concerts do you do?
Twice a year. Once in the spring, once in the fall.
So we can look forward to this one, and then we get to go again next year.
Next spring.
Excellent. So that is what time and place
Tomorrow
again?
night, 7:30, Westfield High School Auditorium.
Free to the public?
Free to the public.
How long is it?
accessible. It's about an hour.
Good. Great place to take your kids.
There you
And
go.
is it always the same musicians, or is it a different
No,
mix
I
every
mean,
time,
there's a
or-
core group that, I mean, we have some that have been there from the get-go, from the beginning. We have some that come and go as they can. It's 6 rehearsals, we do a concert. That's it. And then we move on to the next one. Some play with other community bands in the area. There's one in Chicopee, there's one in South Hadley, excuse me. There's one in Enfield, Florence, so we move around sometimes.
Excellent. You have something on the table.
Yeah.
Can you hold that up? I don't know how well they'll see it. It's the middle camera there. And we have actually it's a videotape.
VHS. So, I've been sitting here looking at that and thinking about that, and I'm looking at, wow, I don't even have a player that could play that anymore. When was this play first released?
1940s?
The movie was
or
in the
50s.
40s, 1942.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is, for those of you children out there, or anyone under 50 probably, this is a VHS tape that you used to put in a machine.
And you had to
and
rewind
you play
it.
it.
Yeah.
And yes, you'd have to and you could rent them.
Yeah,
You'd go to
from,
Blockbuster,
right.
video stores, and
God
you'd
forbid
rent
you
it.
didn't rewind.
But
it.
I'm willing to bet that you can stream it. I would say you can probably stream
yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah.
and it's probably for free on one of the free sites like Pluto or Tubi, or any one of them have Holiday Inn, so you might want to watch it first. One quick question for you, Glenn. What brought you to audition for this? Why are you here? Why are you here, come to think about it?
She made me no, I'm sorry.
She made me. Well, that's why I always have Shelley produce.
I was a musical fan, and Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly were big influences on my dance career, and it's the opportunity was there to do it. I said, I haven't done a role like this in a really long time, which is a real song and dance man kind of role. So I said, let me see
Good
if
for
I
you.
can do it.
Good for you. What was the last show you've done most recently before this one?
The last show was The Mystery of Edwin Drood.
Okay.
Back in the spring.
Any plans in the future?
I will be working with Rob Clark again at Unity House Players doing Catch Me If You Can, musical version of the Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hanks
Correct.
movie.
And that goes up when and where?
It's going to be in March, I think,
I think it's March, yeah.
in a Unity House in, I guess it's technically Longmeadow. And I'll be playing the Christopher Walken part, and my brother David will be playing the Tom Hanks part. So we'll
that's
get
funny.
to work together
That's
again.
funny. He was excellent, by the way, when he played Scrooge. He did a really
My
nice,
brother John.
Yes, the other brother.
The
Yeah, my other brother Daryl.
Another brother. Yeah.
My other brother Daryl.
So I have
he
a
was
question because I was just thinking about it. So as actors,
Mm-hmm.
do you go for a play like Holiday
Mm-hmm.
Inn? Do you now watch this over and over and over to get a sense of how they did it, and then do you have to think about how you're going to do it, or do you try to replicate what they did?
For this one, I watch this pretty much every year on my VCR. So I'm very familiar with it. My challenge is to not try to, I can't. I have replicated some of Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly dances, but I'm not going to duplicate his or try to duplicate his performance. I'm intentionally not watching this and not watching the video of the roundabout production of the stage version, just so I can bring my own
Sometimes your
interpretation.
director does not want you to. It depends on your director. They will say no. When we were doing Bye Bye Birdie, I remember Bob really climbing on Rick, who was playing the father, and he said, "Stop trying to be Peter Lind. You're not Peter Lind. Stop it. Stop it." So sometimes it's your director's choice. They don't want you to mimic a character.
And a lot of times I'll watch it once to get an idea of how the whole thing flows, and maybe there'll be a really great idea. It's like, oh, that's a great idea. Or looking at the script, I didn't see it that way. So I may see something that.
So how hard is it if you're doing if you're playing an iconic actor, someone who is such a strong personality, and people have the vision of how that was going to be played? How hard is it to work around that? Because you have to give your own thing, but people have an expectation that, well, this is how it's supposed to go. This is the way it's supposed to be.
That's the challenge of live theater, community theater. We are not, Gene Kelly, Irving Berlin, or, I'm not Bette Midler or anything like that.
Right.
So when you play a role, you have to make it your own. That's what makes it acting, I guess is the way to say it. So, yes, I've watched it once, or put it away. You have to make it yours. That's the challenge.
Harry, do you have any other questions? I mean, we're almost out of time. Is there any other question that you need to ask for them that they didn't answer already?
No, I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be a
I
great
will be
show.
there.
It will be fabulous, I promise you that.
Yep. I'll probably be selling actograms.
There you go.
So get your dollars out, everybody.
One quick question, audience, who would this appeal to? Would children, families, women, men,
I think this
teenagers?
will appeal to everybody. Like I say, it's an older show, it's an older story, but the music is fabulous from top to bottom.
Is it something you would bring children to?
I think
Because they do ask us this.
Yes, obviously, children under 5 or 6, no, probably not. But if you have a child, and I always say to people when they ask me that, it depends on your child. I have a friend of mine, she has a 7-year-old grandchild who has been listening to Broadway music since the time he was a baby. Yeah, he'll probably love this because it's music he will understand, it's dance, it's whatever. He'll be dancing in the aisles. For a child who knows nothing about theater, maybe not. But anybody probably under the age of 8 or 9, there's something that will appeal to them. There's tap, there's jazz, there's song, there's hopefully jump roping. I don't want to give that away, but there's all sorts of, there's fabulous costumes. Gwen has done yet again an absolute job, a fantastic job with our costumes. So there's always something. Tyler and the pit band, the music will be fabulous. So yes, it will appeal to everybody.
And before we sign off, I want to thank both of you for being here
Thank you for
at
having us.
WCPC.
Have a
We
great
thank
show.
you. Before we
Can't
end
wait to
this
see it.
first hour, though, please tell us once again the dates of the show and where they can get tickets. I do want to mention, because it does still say in some places that you can call for tickets. We don't want you to call for tickets.
No.
If you have information, by all means, we can answer your questions. But please don't think you can order by phone any longer. Is that correct?
That is
So
correct.
tell us the where and when.
Okay, we open up on Thursday, December 5th. We run December 5, 6, and 7 at 7:30. 2 o'clock also on the 7th, and then the following weekend, December 12, 13, and 14 at 7:30 with a matinee at 2 o'clock. Tickets should be live this week at westfieldtheatergroup.com, and that's theater, THEATRE. Again, you should be able to get tickets this weekend, so go to the
Thank you.
website and order them online. Pick up your you can pick your tickets, seats right then and there.
Glenn, any last thoughts?
Come see the show. It's going to be a lot of fun, very entertaining.
And we are
Nice way
looking
to spend
forward
an
to seeing
evening.
you back.
Thank you. I'm looking
Thank you.
forward to being
Welcome
up
back
there.
to the Westfield stage. Harry, any last thoughts?
No, just have a great show. We'll be definitely looking forward to it. And thank you for your commitment to community theater and providing, and to Kathy's original opening, there's always something to do in Westfield, and theater is one of the great outlets.
You got it.
And I know Ann and I always look forward to it. So
And thank you, Peter. We'll go to break here and come up with our second hour, and our guest is already here. So thank you very much to both of you.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies. Rock solid service since 1926. On the web at Rockies.com.
Join me, Tina Gorman, each week from 6 to 8 a.m. for Wake Up Wednesday, when my guests and I discuss health, wellness, and lifestyle reimagined.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
And good morning and welcome back to Ken's Den here at WCPC Community Programming in conjunction with Westfield State College. Westfield State University. I always do that. WSKB 89.5 on the dial. You can also find us on Westfield Theater Group. Westfield Theater Group. I'm still in the first hour. WestfieldTV.org. And for our second hour, and again, this is not Ken. Ken is off somewhere in the Caribbean, laying on his hammock on his deck, having a wonderful time. But this is Kathy Palmer coming to you, and my co-host is Harry Rock. And welcome to our second hour. And Harry, we have a great guest, someone that I've been looking forward to having on for a long time. Honestly, I have. So we are welcoming Dr. Bob Brown, Dr. Robert Brown. Welcome.
Well, glad to be here.
And you may know him from the Westfield Athenaeum. Because what do you do with them, Dr. Brown?
Well, right now I'm nothing more than a volunteer, but I've been down there for 30 to 40 years, basically working in the archives. I was a trustee, chairman of the board for years.
Right.
Just a corporator now and a volunteer.
But
I wouldn't use the word just a volunteer.
Yes. No, you are not just a volunteer. You have been a mainstay at the Athenaeum.
Well, I love the collections. I love books, and also like the people down there. They've got a great group of people.
And you have some videos, though, out on YouTube, do you not?
Yeah, I started during COVID when things were pretty much shut down, and they asked if I would tape a number of the historical talks that I've given around town, and that then led to, after COVID, giving a series of winter talks that have all been taped. So we do usually 3 or 4 every winter, and they're on local history topics, and they're all based on materials that are from the archives.
Excellent. And what are some of those topics?
Well, this winter, we're going to start off with one on Western Avenue, because Western Avenue was developed as a leisure avenue. It was a place for parks. Now, everybody knows about Stanley Park, but there were other parks on that avenue and a golf course. And so I'm going to talk about that development. And then in March, I'm going to talk about the California Gold Rush, because there were a party of Westfield people who went out to California.
I know one of them was an Owen. Didn't one of the Owens go out there?
I think so. There were nobles, and there were a number of Westfield people who went. And luckily, at least one of them kept a diary. And it's another thing we have in the archives. We have some of the records of them.
Interesting.
So talks like that, local history topics that people may not be familiar with.
And those are available on the Westfield Athenaeum site, are they not?
All the previous ones are, and each of them, as we do them, are on their site, yes.
So do you present these live first now, or are they all on tape?
They're always live first now. Usually on a weekday afternoon in the library. And we've had very good turnout. We generally fill the room.
Excellent. And for those of you who have not been to any of Dr. Brown's talks, I do highly advise that you get around to seeing them. I have been there. And Harry, they're excellent. Have you ever? I'm sure you've been to some of them.
Yeah, I have. And Dr. Brown is a huge draw. So if you see his name on something, wherever he's talking, you better get there early, because those seats are going to fill in. There's no question about it.
I think it's reservations. I think you have to reserve.
They usually work on the basis of reservations. Yeah.
Right, right.
So, Dr. Brown, you are not from Westfield. What brought you here to Westfield?
Like most people, I go where the work was. And in the early 60s, I had just finished a degree at Syracuse University, was looking for a job. The then Westfield State College had recently done an accreditation visit, and the accreditation team said, you better beef up your staff. And they were looking for people to fill certain holes in their programs. One of the holes that they had is they claimed they were offering courses in the non-Western world, and they didn't have any staff teaching them. I was in the non-Western world. I was a specialist in Africa and Middle Eastern history, and I got hired. To be quite honest, I didn't intend on staying. And here I am almost 60 years later.
Still here. Still here. But it is to our good fortune that you are here.
Where did you grow up? Where was home?
Upstate New York, in the St. Lawrence River Valley.
Oh, wow.
Some people around here will know about the National Guard who used to go to Fort Drum, in the Fort Drum area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, up where winters were winters. I came down here and thought I'd move to Florida.
That's funny.
Oh, my God.
That's really funny. So we do have you for a reason. We do have you for an important reason because today is Election Day. And again, I'm going to say to people, please go out and vote. If you have not voted, there is still plenty of time. You have all day. If you're not sure of your voting site, please go online. I'm sure the City of Westfield can help you, or you can call the City of Westfield and they will tell you where you can go and vote. I know you are only one vote. I understand that. But all of the numbers, when you see the numbers of voting that pops up on your TV screen 24/7 for the next 5 years, know that you are going to be one of those votes. We are all one vote. So, Dr. Brown, we have brought you in to talk about early voting in, well, colonial days, early days of Westfield, early days of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, early days of the country, wherever you want to go with it. Obviously, before I was born.
Yeah, I got into this kind of in a roundabout way. As I said, I was hired at the then State College, now university, and I became chairman of the Department of History and Government up there. And in the early 70s, I was approached by a retired faculty member who wanted to donate some money to the college to create a museum, he said, because he said the history of the college was important. Well, you never turn money down. So I agreed to do it. And that required me to learn something about the history of the school, which I'm not sure how many people realize is the oldest coeducational public teacher college in the United States, actually in the world.
Wow.
We have to qualify that by saying coeducational because Framingham opened 3 months before we did, but Framingham was for females only. So I got interested, and I had to work on the history of the college, eventually wrote a history of it. And because the college has been in the community of Westfield since the 1840s, that kind of backed me into dealing with the history of the community. Mm-hmm. When I retired, I got more deeply involved in the history of the community, and here I am today. Really, the voting thing came because of my work in the library. Back in the 1990s, I was working in the library and discovered massive collections of documents and letters and photographs going back into the colonial days. Wow. And I began to organize those with a group of volunteers, creating the current archives. And that was filled with interesting documents, a lot of them dealing with early government. And I found that as I was reading these documents, that many of the things in the documents made it quite clear that the standard histories of the town were wrong.
Oh.
They just didn't accurately represent what was going on. One of the things was this idea of democracy. Now, we all know that America's the land founded upon liberty and democracy and votes for all and all participating in government. Well, that isn't the way it worked in Westfield, and in a larger sense in colonial New England, and even in a larger sense, colonial United States. Voting was limited. Now, it wasn't just limited. I think everybody knows it was limited to males, but it wasn't just males. One, you had to be a white male. Two, you had to be a free man. Now, that was a special category. And the best way of seeing it was with the original colonial government document, the Mayflower Compact. When the Pilgrims landed, before they got everybody off the ship, the saints, that is the male Pilgrim leaders, got together and they formed the first government document in the New World, the Mayflower Compact. It was an agreement of how they would govern themselves. And it was kind of unusual because they had not had previous experience in government. Remember, they came from England where power was in the hands of a few, and it was not the Pilgrims. What they said is that adult male members of our faith will have the right to participate in government. So you had to be a Pilgrim. In the larger sense, that meant Puritans. That meant the larger combination. And you had to be elected to be a member. In other words, in order to vote, to participate in government, those who were already there had to vote you in. The reality is that for the first 150 years of Westfield history, for instance, only about half of the adult male citizens of Westfield were freemen, had a right to vote. There was a property qualification. There was a religious qualification. There obviously was a race qualification. There was an age qualification. And then, once you'd met all those qualifications, those who were already in the group, it was sort of like joining a club. They had to vote you in.
Ah.
What is the definition of a free man?
A free man, maybe you've heard of being given the freedom of a city. This is a European term. It's an honorary thing. Sometimes Americans who are important get the freedom of the city of London, for instance. What that meant was you had a right to participate in the government. That's what a free man was. You had full rights of a citizen. But it is not exactly equal to what we think of as adult male voters.
Interesting. So when you moved into the village, then in order to vote, they had to vote you on it?
Originally, in the 17th century, you had to be voted in order to have the rights to participate. Then there were requirements after that. You had to continue to vote. Now, I had a document that I found, and it obviously is not going to show up here, but it is a warrant, that is a government order from 1778 in Westfield calling a town meeting. Now, all governing actions took place in a town meeting. You called all the free men together, all the voters together, and they voted in open public meeting about what they were going to do. Now, this is every decision. I have one from 1778 calling a meeting. They're going to vote for a new minister. And by the way, up until the 1830s, the church was part of the town government. If you did not show up and vote, you were fined. You had to pay a fine for not voting.
Wow.
Now, that's kind of an interesting concept. We quite often see voting turnout is very, very low. I don't think it's going to be today. I think it's going to be heavy today. But we just had a primary election where voting turnout was abysmal. You had to pay a fine if you didn't show up. Only the voters could be elected to office.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
So that meant that the non-freemen, not only didn't they get to vote in the government, they didn't get to serve in the government.
So they had no say whatsoever.
They had no say at another except paying taxes.
Interesting. We often think of it as only being the women that were disenfranchised, but apparently it wasn't.
At least in the first 150 years. Now, I think everybody knows that we had a president called Andrew Jackson, who is sometimes called the first Democratic president, and he's very, very famous for creating the Democratic Revolution. Well, what that Democratic Revolution was, Jackson represented the non-voters. And with the Jacksonian Revolution, which is the fancy way of saying the change of the 1830s, voting among adult white males became pretty nearly universal. Really universal. You know, there's an awful lot of controversy recently about non-citizens voting, immigrants and voting. Up until the 1920s, nobody really cared. You could just step off the boat and vote.
Interesting.
It was really in the 20th century that suddenly people began to pay very close attention to who is a citizen, how do you get to be a citizen, putting in requirements. You know, we have a citizenship test these days. There's a lot of joking, but I think there may be some truth to it that the large part of our current citizens probably couldn't pass the test.
I don't think they could. I'm sure they could not.
People didn't worry about that for the first couple of hundred years. You were here. If you met the other qualifications, you voted.
And the other qualifications?
Well, originally it was white adult male. Now, maybe I ought to clear up a confusion here. There's nothing in the Constitution about the right to vote. There's nothing there. Now, what there is in the Constitution, there are a series of amendments, really beginning with the 15th Amendment in 1870, that says if you have voting, you can't discriminate against this category. So the 15th Amendment, for instance, says if you have voting, you can't say blacks can't vote. The 19th Amendment of 1920 says if you have voting, you can't stop women from voting. The 26th Amendment of 1971 says if you have voting, then you have to allow 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to vote. But there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to have voting.
Interesting. I had run across something historically that said it way back in the beginning with the Pilgrims, and when they originally set up the laws, and particularly the Electoral College, which we'll ask you about maybe, that the men in power didn't want other people voting.
Oh, no.
They thought they were the only ones who should be making the decisions.
The original Constitution, and that's without amendments, no amendments. The original Constitution is designed to keep power out of the hands of the masses. Amendments over the years have spread the power to more and more people. Well, the Electoral College, for instance, that's a classic example. I think most people have heard the statement, but I think most people don't understand the statement that when you cast a vote today, for instance, you are not voting for the president. Your vote may or may not mean a thing about who's president. You're voting for a slate of electors. Now, when the Constitution was drawn up, the Founding Fathers said, we need a president. How are we going to get a president? What we'll do is we will allow each state to have a body of people called electors, and there will be 2 electors from each state, plus there will be an additional elector for each member of the House of Representatives, population-based. The people who run the state will select those electors. And those electors will get together and they will select a president. In fact, George Washington was not elected by the people. Thomas Jefferson was not elected by the people. John Adams was not elected by the people. People didn't vote for those presidents. The electors chose them.
Interesting.
Electors were picked by state legislatures. State legislatures were highly restrictive in who had the right to vote. Over the years, the custom has developed that you'll have a popular vote, and the popular vote will determine who the electors will be.
I see.
However, in almost every presidential election of the 20th century, at least one elector chosen by popular vote has voted differently than the popular vote says. No law requires the elector to obey anything.
Interesting. And frightening.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, theoretically, we could go through this exercise today, have tens of millions of voters casting their ballots, and come December, these 500 electors could get together and do whatever they wanted. Could.
Interesting. And
that's what the Constitution says.
So in the first elections with Washington, Jefferson, there was no party.
There was no party, and there was no popular vote. I mean, people didn't go out and vote for George Washington for president. Didn't happen.
So how did they get a vice president?
Well, that led to one of the numerous times when this whole voting business and presidents gets really complicated. And we've had these moments in the past. The first time was in the election of 1800, because what the electors were supposed to do is they were supposed to vote for 2 people of different states. So you couldn't vote for 2 men from Virginia. You had to vote, if you wanted George Washington, you'd vote for George Washington, and then you had to vote for somebody else. And he couldn't be from Virginia. Whoever got the most votes was president. Whoever got the second most votes was vice president. In 1800, we had an interesting problem. There was a tie for the top 2 votes. There was a tie. What do you do now? Well, it got really bloody and really complicated and really tore the nation apart, and they had a constitutional amendment that said you don't do that anymore. The electors aren't going to elect that way. You'll have people running for president and vice president on the same party, and that's really where political parties came from. We agreed that the president and vice president will be linked together, and so if you vote for the president, you automatically have voted for the vice president. But in the first few years, they did it differently.
Interesting. We're halfway through. Peter, if you want to take us to a short break, and we'll pick this back up on the other side. Thank you.
countryside had been paved down the middle by a government that had no pride. The farms of Ohio had been replaced by shopping malls, and music filled the air from Seneca to Cuyahoga Falls. City area, oh, where to go, Ohio?
Underwriting support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business for the Greater Westfield communities. Informing, educating, advocating, the Chamber provides opportunities for members to make meaningful connections on local, regional, and state levels. For more information on the Chamber's many events, workshops, and programs, as well as the benefits of membership, visit westfieldbiz.org. The Chamber focuses on the most important economy, yours.
Hi, this is Harry Rock, host of Rock on Westfield every fourth Wednesday at 8 a.m. Tune in for my view of this place I call home.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
And welcome back, people of Westfield. It is voting day, and we have Harry Rock here, co-hosting with me, Kathy Palmer, and in the middle is Dr. Bob Brown, and he has been telling us some really great things, Harry, about early voting in Westfield and the colonies in general. And you had a great question, Harry. Did you want to repeat that?
Yeah, earlier Dr. Brown was referencing the fact that the Constitution did not mention voting. And I was just curious if that was an oversight or if that was intentional.
Oh, it was absolutely intentional. The Founding Fathers simply did not believe that the average citizen was qualified to make important decisions about government. Keep in mind that the president was to be selected by a group of selected electors. The Senate, in many ways the most important of the two houses, was to be appointed by the state legislatures. They were not voted on at all until, well over 100 years later. The House of Representatives you did have popular votes for the members of the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives' power was restricted to largely budgetary items. But things like all the appointments to government offices, that's Senate power. Foreign policy, that's Senate power. The House deals with budgetary issues. And then, of course, you have the vetoes by the president in the Senate, which can override the action there. And keep in mind, when this was done, even voting for the House was limited because it was restricted to free men, a limited body of adult white males. So, yeah, power was deliberately kept out of the hands of the masses. Even Thomas Jefferson, the great Democrat, made it quite clear that, yes, he thought that the rural farmer was an important person, but he wanted that rural farmer to be led by an intellectual elite.
I see. So it was a very restrictive, early government was very restrictive to only certain members of society.
Yeah, and it was done on purpose, and it wasn't a big problem. I mean, you're dealing with essentially an agricultural society of limited numbers. What was important in most people's lives were local issues, and they would be handled by the local community. The federal government, and to a certain extent even the state government, had very little involvement in the day-to-day lives of most people in America, certainly during the first 100 years of American existence.
I would think, honestly, if you think back to early Westfield and their history, and I don't mean to simplify it, but I'm thinking they were just worried about, and I'm not being facetious or humorous, getting their crops in, feeding their family, just day-to-day existence,
right,
not really worried about what was going on until the Revolution.
Westfield was a frontier community that had much bigger matters in their minds than foreign policy or anything like that. Occasionally they would make comment about it, but it didn't impact their lives, they felt. In fact, a tradition developed here in rural western Massachusetts of being again. They were again government.
Gotcha.
You've got to remember that western Massachusetts was the home of Shays' Rebellion, rebelling against government interference, government taxes. Westfield, for instance, voted against the federal Constitution when ratification of the federal Constitution came. Westfield voted against the new state constitution of the 1790s.
I remember that, yeah.
During the Civil War, there's this sense of patriotism, defending the nation against secession. 25% of the voters in Westfield in the 1860 election did not vote for Lincoln. They voted for Breckinridge, who was the secessionist, anti-abolitionist, pro-slavery presidential candidate.
Interesting.
In 1864, 4 years into the Civil War, Westfield just barely voted for Lincoln the second time.
Is that right? Wow.
Interesting.
There is a sense, pretty widespread in western Massachusetts throughout its history, and in Westfield in particular, of leave me alone. I don't need government. I don't want government. Just let me be.
Let me do my thing. Speaking of the Civil War and Lincoln, you brought some things with you that we would like to really talk about.
Yeah, people today are going in and casting their ballot. And what people understand is you go to a designated spot, the government gives you a list of potential candidates, in some fashion a list, and you pick.
Oh, we do.
Here, for example, is a ballot from 1938.
Wow.
And I brought this in particular because where you can see my hand on the left-hand side, it lists a number of the potential parties going down. It includes the Socialist Party, the Socialist Labor Party, and the Communist Party. And many of the spots of the offices, you have candidates from the Communist Party. As late as 1938, you could go to Westfield. You could go in and cast your votes for the Communist Party.
Holy smokes.
Now, a ballot like that is new. That's called the Australian ballot. What it is a government-provided ballot that, in essence, where your vote can be secret. Prior to the 1890s, that's not what a ballot was. what you did prior to the 1890s is you went to your local political organization, political party when they were founded, and you said, I want to vote for our candidate. And they gave you a ballot. Now, I've brought in some samples of Ulysses S. Grant's Republican ballot from Westfield, and probably more significantly, the Lincoln ballot from 1864. Here's a Grant ballot. And one of the things you may notice is that it's more than just Grant and the Vice President Wilson. It's all other candidates of the party. You don't get to split your vote. You got that ballot from your party.
So you had to take everybody.
And then you walked into the voting booth or the voting place, and you handed that ballot to somebody. You put it in a box for your party. So everybody knew who you were voting for. And the only way you could get a ballot was from the party. Now, I mention that because one of the stories about the Lincoln election of 1860, for instance, is that he didn't get any votes from some of the southern states. And when you say that, people think that, well, that means that nobody in those states supported him. That was not true. We know that there were numerous people from even Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina who ended up enlisting in the Union Army and fought on the Union side. There were Union supporters. But what it meant is that nobody in those states printed up ballots for Lincoln and then stood around at the polling places and handed them out to potential voters who would have to identify themselves publicly. Since there's no government ballot, if somebody doesn't print one for you, you don't get any votes.
So it was up to the parties to hand them out?
Yes. That's where you get all these stories about corruption and illegal voting and all the rest of that, because it was very easy, realistically, for somebody to just simply take a handful of these ballots and stuff them in the ballot box. It was real easy to do that. You don't have the government in control of ballots, keeping an eye on them, making sure that that doesn't happen. Ballots were just pieces of paper. Here, for instance, is the Lincoln one, and this is a Westfield ballot.
Oh.
This is what it would look like in Westfield. This is what you picked up and carried it into the election vote. And you can see it's the Republican Union ticket, and you have all the other offices there, so that when you cast a ballot, you cast a ballot for the party. There's a Westfield one coming up, and some Springfield ones.
So you voted, okay, so you to your point, it was not a split vote. You couldn't vote.
You could not split your vote.
It's all or nothing.
It was all or nothing.
Wow.
You see,
and we learned this morning from the other show that even when the mechanical voting machines came in, up until about like the 60s or 70s, you had to hit Republican or Democrat just to unlock the machine. And the hope was that you'd vote one party line or the other.
Yeah, and also people knew how you were voting. Now, that meant that for your average working man, let's say the owner of the factory, he is in favor of one party, and you got all these day laborers who are working for him lining up. Well, he knows how they're voting.
It would be very intimidating.
It's a very intimidating process. There was a long struggle to get what is known as the Australian ballot, which is the secret ballot that is run by the government. It's and it's fairly new. We're talking again, roughly a little over 100 years ago. So that for 200 years of American history, that's not how it was done.
So you had mentioned earlier, I think when we were in the break, you had said that most of this is all controlled by the state, not the federal government.
There is nothing in the Constitution that says citizens have a right to vote. Now, I'm qualifying that every time. There are amendments to the Constitution which say if you have voting, you can't discriminate against these categories of people. But voting is controlled by state governments. They set the rules. For instance, we talked about electors. I think the assumption is that electors, and in Massachusetts it's how we do it, is a block vote. That is, if one party wins the popular vote in Massachusetts, then all the electors for that party are the same. That's not required. In Maine and Wyoming, electors are parceled out to the voting districts. So whoever wins that district wins that elector.
Gotcha.
And in an election that is very, very close, and remember, close means by electors.
Mm-hmm. Not popular.
Because in the last 50 years, we've had a number of elections in which the party who got the majority of votes didn't get the majority of electors.
Right.
So in an election that's very close in terms of electors, the Bush-Gore election, for instance, was decided by a single electoral vote.
Yikes.
That means that in a district like Maine, for instance, where the votes are parceled out by district, the battle in that district in a close election becomes very important.
I see that.
And that's why you see all this, the last few months, there's been constant news stories about the candidates concentrating on a handful of states.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, many states don't ever see the candidates at all.
Right.
And that's because realistically, with this system of electors, a handful of states make a difference.
Right.
I see that. I understand.
Well, they always talk about the pathway, and they're looking at Pennsylvania or whatever, and they're adding up. Okay, so here's your pathway. This is what you need to get to that 270.
Yeah, because it's only in those states where it's a question about who gets the majority that count.
I see.
Most states, everybody knows what the outcome is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, we think. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't.
Going back to the writing of the Constitution, I was just thinking about this, and again, that's the basis of where we've come to as things have evolved. But in the writing of that Constitution, as they thought about how to create the great experiment, this democratic experiment that we have, was this just coming out of their mind? Was the monarchy from England part of that influence? Were they looking at other forms of government?
Yeah. Many of the men who created the Constitution were, by the standards of the day, highly educated.
Right.
Very sophisticated. They were, and quite rightly, they're called the Founding Fathers. They were, in largest sense, a very, very talented bunch of people. And you have to look at what they did in the context of the world around them compared to what else was out there. They were making great advances. Mm-hmm. The problem is we're sitting here today, 300 years later, looking back and saying, well, they didn't do the following things. And that's true. They didn't. And they didn't because they didn't live in a world where that made any sense.
Right.
In 1789 Constitution, there weren't an awful lot of people running around the world that said 18-year-olds ought to be given the reins of government. You know, I mean, there are an awful lot of people running around the world today who
Think that.
Don't think that.
Right.
Oh, there's a lot that do.
You know, in 1789, to say that the average Black American, and keep in mind who Black Americans were in 1789, they were mostly slaves, should have a right to decide who the president is? I mean, that would be a revolutionary concept in that day. Now, today, looking back, we say, you know, this is strange kind of thinking. Well, it's only because we're 300 years later.
Right.
We live in a different world. Yeah, I have no intention of throwing rocks at what they did. I just think it's important that we understand what they did, because it is the basis of what is possible today.
Good point. One thing I did want to ask you about, and you mentioned it very briefly, we have so much information. We need to keep going on this forever and ever. I could listen to this man all day. But what was the church's influence in early Westfield for government or whatever, especially Taylor?
Well, keep in mind that church and state were the same thing in Massachusetts until, I think, 1834 or so. It was called an established church. What that meant is that the taxpayers hired and fired the minister, paid for the functioning of the church. How much power the minister had depended on how effective he was and how much the people allowed him to have. Taylor, for instance, wanted to preserve the original Puritan power in town. He was the conservative faction. Now, you've got all these people in town who didn't want to do that. In fact, very few members of the Westfield population were members of the church. Now, by law, everybody had to attend the church. But to be a member of the church, you had to have what modern evangelicals would call a religious experience. Then you had to explain that religious experience publicly to the other adult male members of the church, and they voted whether they believed you or not.
Oh.
And if they believed you, then you became a member of the church. Well, an awful lot of people were unwilling to do that. And so, in fact, during Taylor's ministry, most of the members of his church were female. Very few of the adult men were. And by law, you had to attend church or you got fined.
Oh.
Now, remember that Westfield in those days extended down to the line of Suffield and up to Montgomery and up to Southampton. Well, if you lived in Suffield and it was February and the snow was 3 feet deep, you were going to ride a horse for a few hours into downtown Westfield to attend church services? You refused.
Right.
So up until the disestablishment of the church in, as I said, I think it's 1834, the church was an integral part of town politics, town government. But rather than thinking of the church controlling the town, look at it the other way around. The town controlled the church. It hired and fired the ministers. It paid his salary or didn't pay them. Taylor and others were suing the town to try and get their pay. It was a different situation.
Great information today, Harry. Great
Yeah,
show.
really
Thank you, Dr. Brown,
fascinating.
for coming in. We really enjoyed having you, but we're out of time. So thank you, Harry. Thank you again for coming in.
Happy to be here.
We
and
do our here.
Very
Peter,
glad
thank
to do
you.
it. Had a
Peter,
fun
thank
time.
you for all you do, and we'll see you next week.